You are watching me, Mick, here on my YouTube channel, Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on X at Movies TV Mad, Instagram Movies TV Mad X, and of course here on my YouTube channel. Welcome to today's extended video. Today we're focusing on Doctor Who. I was very surprised to see that I've got about 16 likes and over 500 views on my Doctor Who review for the church on Ruby Road. I want to thank you all for that attention and for the comments and for the likes, because you're thinking 16 likes, Mick, over 500 views, why is that good? Well, my friends, that's very good for me, because in the past I'd have about 70 to 100 views for a DC video or something else I was talking about. Doctor Who barely used to get any views because predominantly my subscribers were subscribed to me for DC content. So I want to thank you. So we are going to be talking a lot more Doctor Who on this channel. We're going to be talking as much Doctor Who as we do DC as we do today. Now, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, so it's not about the views and the likes, but I was just very surprised that my review got so much attention, because I'm not very good at reviews. I forget people's names. I forget what happens in episodes half the time. It all goes in one ear and out the bloody other, unfortunately, with me. But if you did like the review, I'm very glad that you did. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and share. Always like, always leave a comment. It all helps. So today, as I say, we're talking about Doctor Who. We're asking the question about Mrs. Flood. Who the hell is Mrs. Flood, played by the iconic Anita Dobson? And what's the whole mavity versus gravity thing? And where is Russell T Davies going with this whole thing? I think the idea is to change human history slightly, to show that changing one word that still means pretty much the same thing can change human history. By changing one thing, you could end up changing everything. And I think this is what Russell T Davies is doing as well. Also, I think something very interesting happened in the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. And I think it's when Ruby's wiped from the timeline, because I think things were different, and the Doctor's destiny and Ruby's destiny was very different before Ruby was wiped off the timeline. And I think once she's brought back into the timeline, certain things change. So, for example, Mrs. Flood could have just been a random old lady before Ruby vanished off the timeline. But when she comes back, something's changed. You see, by wiping her from the timeline, then bringing her back, you could have created two versions of Ruby. One is the young one, played by Millie, and second is the older one, played by Anita. Be interesting, wouldn't it, if Anita Dobson is now playing Mrs. Flood, but actually she's an older version of Ruby Sunday, sitting there watching things kind of pop off. That's how she knows what a TARDIS is. She could obviously be an aged former companion. If you think about it, you have to do your maths to try and work out what companion that could be, because obviously you have to set your minds back not just to New Who, but previous as well. So it could be a scenario that we have now an older and younger Ruby Sunday. One is Mrs. Flood and one is actually Ruby Sunday. That's one of my theories to who Mrs. Flood is. But look, as I mentioned in my review the other day, I think I mentioned it, that I believe that Mrs. Flood was the one who left Ruby at the church. Could Mrs. Flood actually be Ruby's mother or a watcher? What is going on here? Well, I think again, Russell T Davies has been very, very smart. He sets up the mavity versus gravity thing in his 60th anniversary specials. I think that was very, very clever by Russell as well, by the way. So he sets it up. But he also does this Mrs. Flood thing. So I think what's interesting about this whole thing, he's gone back to worded arcs. Because Stephen Moffat loved these big arcs that took up episodes. We saw what happened with the reveal that River's song was Melody Pond. That took up a lot of episodes. But what Russell T Davies did in his original era was we had Bad Wolf, we had Torchwood, we had Harold Saxon, we had The Bees Have Gone Missing. He just had little worded arcs, little clues. And I think the brilliance of those worded arcs is that you don't have to spend entire episodes of the arcs. Why wouldn't he want to spend entire episodes on a story arc? Because he knows the Doctor Who fandom don't like it and can get bored and stop watching episodes. This actually happened in season 6 as the whole Melody Pond arc and all of that, you know, the Doctor having a death day. Fans started to get a little bit disinterested, and if we remember, was it The Girl Who Waited, that episode where more people watched Family Fortunes than the episode? People began to get really, really tired of season 6, especially season 6B, if you go back and look at the ratings. So I think it's one thing that Russell T Davies understands, that every episode of Doctor Who has to be unique as the last, and you can't kind of drag the audience like a dog. Here, come on, watch anything I give you, eat anything I give you. No. You know, people want to be interested. So I think this next season is going to be an interesting season of Doctor Who, where he teases you with the words Mrs. Flood, with the mavity word. I think you'll hear these things and there'll be new clues towards this. But I do think it's all about changing human history. And I do think it's all absolutely very, very interesting. And I don't think that Mrs. Flood, as I said in my review, I may have said it in my review, that I don't think that Mrs. Flood is a previous character. I mean, at best, she might be the Master. I don't think she's the Rainey. I don't think she's Susan. But my good friend Millie, who's playing Ruby, did say in an interview that next season is going to be very controversial. Why am I not surprised? But then Russell T's controversy for the giggle, and I didn't really find that controversial. I mean, what really happened in the giggle? We found out that maybe, you know, the toy maker has been playing with the Doctor's life and past, and that could mean that there's two versions now of the Doctor's past, the Timeless Children, and the original one where he does come from Gallifrey. Interesting. Is this what Mavity versus Gravity and Mrs. Flood is also setting up a multiverse? Now, I didn't say that in my Instagram video today, or my X video when I was talking about the same thing. So that's interesting. Is this setting up a kind of multiverse? I think that is a possibility, because I don't think the question should be, who is Mrs. Flood? But what does she mean to Doctor Who? What is her plan? Why is she there? And as I say, I think we have two versions of Mrs. Flood. The one prior to Ruby vanishing from the timeline, and two, the one after Ruby is returned into the timeline by the Doctor. Time is changing. And the clue of the string, when the Doctor was measuring the mavity of the string or whatever he was doing, was an interesting moment as well. So these are all little clues. So Russell has started up a very interesting arc. Mavity versus Gravity and the whole Mrs. Flood thing. I think these are two really, really exciting ideas. And I think RTD is cooking again as a Doctor Who showrunner. I don't really care if Davros is in a wheelchair or isn't in a wheelchair. If the episodes kind of capture my imagination, I'm okay. I said this with my Star Beast review. I said I didn't particularly, appreciate the whole, male doctor thing that they said. But at the end of the day, male presenting doctor thing. But at the end of the day, it's not a deal breaker for me. I'm not going to stop watching Doctor Who because of it. And I welcome a trans character played by a trans actor on Doctor Who. It doesn't bother me. Those things don't bother me. What type of person would I be if that kind of stuff bothered me? Were the episodes interesting at the very least? As I said about the free specials, they didn't seem very special, but they did feel like solid episodes of Doctor Who at the very least, and they wasn't bad episodes. So I'm sticking with Doctor Who for the time being. I'm interested in what Russell's doing here. I love Doctor Who, and I don't want to be without it, and I don't want to stop watching it, and I don't want people to stop watching it because I don't want Doctor Who to end. Some people would love to hear that Doctor Who's been cancelled via bad ratings, so they can say, oh, you go woke, you go broke. Maybe that's one of the reasons I'm getting quite a few people watching my Doctor Who videos, because I'm not here to talk about wokeness all the time. It's mentioned, of course. The way the audience is treated by the industry isn't very good these days. And how they speak about movies during the marketing, I've called them out for all of this. But that's not the themes of my videos. I'm all about the art. I'm all about the films and the episodes of TV shows. I am not interested in politics in any way, shape or form. If you're interested in the politics of entertainment, you know, the fandom menace are working on triggering you every day. But I'm not here to trigger you. And today we're here to talk about Doctor Who and what Russell T Davies is planning, because I think it's very, very interesting. And I do think he's going back to these worded arcs, and I think this is a clever thing to do, because as I say, you don't have to waste episode upon episode. Let's not forget, we're only going to have 8 episodes in series 14, 1, whatever it is, right? Let's just call it season 1, because that's for some reason why they're doing it. And this could be another reason why I believe that maybe they're creating a Doctor Who multiverse as well. It's very, very interesting. Russell is certainly up to something. Don't forget, I predicted that in the giggle that Shooty's Doctor would be part of a new Doctor Who timeline and not part of the old timeline. A bit like Daniel Craig's James Bond compared to the Roger Moore and Sir Sean Connery ones. Now, he didn't do it, but it doesn't mean that's not the plan. That doesn't mean this is what the whole mavity versus gravity is all about. We will see. We've been told by Russell that the Mrs. Flood thing is a slow burn. So that means it may not even be resolved by the end of this season. Maybe it will, maybe it won't be. So as I say, I don't think that who Mrs. Flood is important. What she represents to Doctor Who and how powerful she is going to be interesting. Because I think we can maybe guess, and I think we can give ourselves a 65% chance that she isn't human. But is she a previous enemy? Is she a previous Doctor Who character? No. Is she a good character? No. I think she's definitely a villain. I think that's for sure. We are dealing with a very smart villain here who knows what a TARDIS is. That's for clear. That's clear, what we're seeing here. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's not a villain. Maybe she's just watching over the Doctor. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe she is a previous companion. She could be an older version, as I say, of Ruby. It's going to be very interesting how important Ruby is within this arc. Is Ruby's son... I mean, for example, if Mavity goes back to being Gravity again, does Ruby Sunday exist? This is interesting. This is something else that I didn't think of when I was doing my Instagram video and my X video. If you change back, if you revert back to the old ways, the old timeline of Gravity versus Mavity, does Ruby Sunday still exist? I have my doubts, because I think if you go back to Gravity instead of Mavity, whatever existed when everything was Gravity before is going to exist, and whatever didn't exist before, I think the Mavity timeline isn't a real timeline. That's true. I think there's 2 timelines right now. And this is interesting, because I think this will be, and I think the bi-generation thing is all part of that, because the bi-generation thing is part of the Mavity universe. This is the thing, isn't it? This is the thing. I think, and this is what I just, excuse me, but I was just talking about a multiverse and things like that. RTD has already created 2 timelines. As I say, you've got the Mavity timeline and you've got the Gravity timeline. So, Ruby, for all intents and purposes, the way I'm seeing it now, wouldn't exist in the Gravity timeline. So that's going to be an interesting thing, what happens at the end of the season. if things revert back at the end of the season to gravity, will Ruby Sunday vanish? But will the Doctor still remember her? This is interesting. The Doctor was the only one who remembered Ruby once she was wiped off the timeline. This could be foreshadowing to what I'm saying from Russell T Davies. That when we go back to gravity, she won't exist. Nothing will exist that exists. So David Tennant living in Donna Noble's garden won't be a thing. Shoot it now. This is interesting as well. This is interesting. Very interesting, because it could be a bigger twist than that. Now, we know that Ncuti Gatwa is shooting another second series of Doctor Who. So the whole thing is, this mavity versus gravity thing could go on for 2 series. Instead of the one that I was just saying. So imagine this. So when you go to the end of his second season, if you revert back to gravity instead of mavity, that he won't exist. Because he's part of the mavity universe. The bi-generation is part of the mavity universe. And this is what I believe. If you, because you can have these, and this is interesting as well, because you can have 2 universes. So they may stay open. You may have a mavity universe and a gravity universe. There could be, and here's the thing, there may actually be a gravity universe out there. So, this is what RTD could do, right? Think about this. And I honestly, I don't script my videos, I'm just thinking out aloud, right? So what, by the end of all this arc, you have a mavity universe and a gravity universe coexisting. Think about that for a minute. So David Tennant would be the Doctor in one of those universes, and Ncuti Gatwa, or whoever's going to be the Doctor after Ncuti, would carry on being the Doctor. 2 different timelines of Doctor Who. Something, if you remember rightly, and I mentioned earlier, I predicted for the giggle. That actually, he's just playing the long game with. I might go on to one of his posts and actually throw this at him. Russell T Davies is quite crafty. If you have a theory and you post it on his Instagram and it's wrong, he'll like it. Obviously, he isn't going to like the correct theory. So I'd be very interested in putting this on. Because it's an interesting theory. 2 timelines, a mavity and a gravity universe. And 2 different timelines of the Doctor. Because this bi-generation, don't forget, as I say, the bi-generation thing is the mavity thing. But could you, and so if we've got, so who's the Doctor in the gravity universe then? David Tennant is a version of the Doctor in the mavity universe. So is Ncuti Gatwa. I've also made, I've already made that prediction that Tennant could end up splitting off to the gravity universe if there isn't already a Doctor. But if there is already a Doctor, could it be that actually, maybe, Joe Martin is the Doctor? For example, it could be anyone, but Joe Martin is the Doctor in the gravity universe. I think there's definitely 2 different universes now. So instead of the mavity thing changing history, maybe what they've done is by creating mavity instead of gravity, or mavity versus gravity, that they created 2 timelines. And I suspect this was Russell T Davies' plan, as I predicted all along. By having a multiverse and creating it in its infancy and not just having it there, you build to something. It means you can take your time before you do your spin-offs. Because it's clear he's planning some type of spin-off world. Now, let's not forget that in the Mavity universe, every Doctor is out there now and exists. But in the Gravity universe, it's normal Doctor Who. So here's the thing. In the Mavity universe, right, the Doctor is the timeless child. Russell T Davies is a very, very clever man, right? Don't forget this. Whether you like him or not, right? Whether he likes you or not, I don't know. If you've upset him at some time. I mean, I fell out with Russell once. I was, I was being a bit unkind about the Chris Chibnall era. I wasn't being, toxic or anything. I tagged him and he told me off for tagging him in a negative video, and I apologise, and that's it. We get on now. That's it. You don't have to stay in bad terms with someone just because you fell out with them. I was wrong for tagging him. I thought he'd appreciate me. I stupidly thought he'd appreciate me bigging him up while talking down about Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who. I was wrong to do it. Obviously, they're friends. I was being a bit stupid and naive, if you ask me. Anyway, getting back to the subject at hand, I definitely think this is quite exciting now. And I've actually, as I say, I've only come up with this during this video. So this is what happens in my videos, right? Because they're not scripted, anything can happen. I can start saying one thing, then I can change my mind totally. And I think I've got something here. It's like, boing, a light's come up on my brain, which, yeah, let's not melt the little brain cells I've already got, right? But yeah, this is quite exciting, because I do think. So I interrupted myself saying that in the mavity universe, the timeless children exist, but in the gravity universe, they don't. Maybe we've been in the mavity universe all along, since the timeless children. Maybe. Because who's to say? How, and maybe, and let's be a little bit more controversial here. Everyone was up in arms, not everyone, just the silly people, for having a brown actor playing Isaac Newton, right? Well, in this universe, maybe he's brown. And maybe in the gravity universe, he's actually white. Maybe. Maybe. Maybe that's why he's brown in the first place. Look, we know in today's entertainment industry, they take historical figures and they make them black or they make them brown. It's not something I necessarily agree with, but it's not something I'm passionate about either or really care about. If that's what they want to do, as I said at the time, the reality is Isaac Newton was white. It isn't important. If they want to make him brown, it doesn't make him brown, does it? It's up to them. So getting angry about it is a bit stupid and futile because he's white. It's not important to me whether he's white or brown, actually, by the way, just to be fucking clear. But yeah, you could have a dark-skinned Isaac Newton and you could have a light-skinned Isaac Newton. So you could have an accurately, toned complexion Isaac Newton in the gravity world, and then you could have the darker version in the mavity world. So mavity and gravity could be an analogy for two different universes and timelines. So it will be very interesting if my theory comes to pass. Very, very interesting. I'd love to know your theories. We're not going to go off. We're not going to finish this video yet. But sorry about that, but I'm going to drone on for a little bit longer. But yeah, I want to know your theories about this. Do you agree with me? Do you think mavity and gravity are two different timelines now? Could that be a thing? And as I say, Mrs. Flood, what do you think about her? I'm not going to be one of these content creators who puts people down because they have theories of it being an original older character. That's fun and that's fine and that's brilliant. No one should be putting people down, even if you believe the theories are wrong, right? Don't worry about it. It's just people having fun. If we can't have fan theories, what's the fucking point of YouTube, social media? What's the point? It's part of the fun to converse with each other and listen to each other's theories respectfully. That's what I want to do on this channel. Respect everyone's opinions as much as I can. And if I've said anything in this video that disrespects your opinion, it weren't done on purpose. It's an apology. I apologize. It's just, I'm a passionate person. That's it, so I apologise. It's just people going off in their mouths. I just run off at the mouth sometimes. I love Doctor Who. I love entertainment. I love this shit. I remember I used to watch X-Files and Lost and have all those theories with those fans, fellow fans of those shows. It's exciting. This is what fandom needs to get back to. Not arguing and getting triggered by an opposing opinion and looking at people's social media history to try and expose them. That's just so sad, isn't it? I don't want to live in that world. Because the truth is, if we wanted to, we could find out shit on each other just like that in this era of social media. With catalogued content. We could, it's easy to do. But at the end of the day, You find something on me, I find something on you. Where does it end? Why don't we just be friends, right? Why don't we just admit we're human beings, we're flawed. Sometimes I'll have a good take, sometimes I'll have a bad take, sometimes you'll have a good take, sometimes you'll have a bad take. But it's all about opinions. Your bad take isn't universally bad, my take isn't universally bad or good. It's all about a point of view. Let's just be friends. Because before I was on the internet, when I used to be obsessed with Smallville when it was on, my dream was to converse with other Smallville fans. And I was always trying to think of a way. Because back then I didn't have the money to get a laptop or a phone or be on the internet. Because it was kind of expensive in the early days, right? And when Smallville was on, at the time, it was expensive to go on the internet. It's different now. It's more accessible, isn't it? So I wish I could have conversed with Smallville fans. I converse with them now. But that's the thing. So this is a pleasure to converse with other Doctor Who fans, Lost fans, X-Files fans, Smallville fans, Superman fans, right? 24 fans, whatever, right? This should be a pleasure for all of us. It's fun to meet like-minded people who like the same stuff. But even if you like the same stuff, you're not going to have the same views as on the stuff. That's the point, isn't it? So you may not agree with a word I've just said about Doctor Who. You may not be interested in Doctor Who anymore. It may trigger you. You may think it's the W-O-K-E thing. That's fine. There's other platforms that will hold you and will hold you up. But I love Russell T Davies. He's my inspiration as a creative. What he did with the original revival was outstanding. I'm happy he's back. And I've admitted, I've been balanced and said, I didn't feel his 3 specials really celebrated 60 years of an iconic TV show enough. That doesn't mean I despise the man, right? I'm balanced. And it's fine and it's okay. Just because you like someone, it doesn't mean you have to be positive about them 100% of the time. But I still enjoyed those 3 episodes. I still think they're okay. They're not classic Who. I don't think they're really watchable Who or anything like that. But I found them interesting at the very least. But I did enjoy The Church on Ruby Road. Very interesting episode. Warmed up, as I said in my review, once Ruby vanished. And then when the Doctor, shooting out what is front and centre, he takes that screen. It felt like that moment when the Doctor faces the Sycorax in the Christmas Invasion, and he became our Doctor. Ncuti Gatwa is everything a Russell T Davies is a typical Russell T Davies character and Doctor. He's clever, he's full of personality, he's very, very alpha as well. I was a bit concerned that this would be a more, let's say, Gen Z Doctor, where they wouldn't want him to be so alpha, but he is alpha, because a gay Doctor can still be alpha, right? And that's okay. It's like some people are triggered saying, oh, the Doctor's gay. Well, it's not a children's show anymore. Doctor Who has already been, always strayed the line of being a children's show and an adult show at the same time. But, you know, just because the lead character is gay, it doesn't mean it's not friendly for children. That's like saying, oh, it's a straight show, well, children shouldn't watch it. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You know, you have to kind of wind your neck in a little bit. I mean, you know, some human beings are straight and some human beings are gay. It may turn out that this Doctor may be bi. Maybe. But if he is gay, like the joke about the old magician, right? Getting hot and steamy. What was his name? Forgot now. But it was a passing, but, you know, Russell's and Stephen Moffat's like Doctors have always said, oh yeah, you know, oh, I used to have a scotch with this historical president and things like that, didn't it? And this time it's just, oh, I got hot with this magician. So what? He's claiming he had sex with that really famous magician whose name fucking escapes me. As you know, names escape me very often. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like he goes, oh yeah, you know, this magician bent me over and we did this and that, and you're saying it's not friendly for children. He literally just said, hot and steamy, and wake up and smell the shit. Most kids watching Doctor Who know all about sex already. Let's not get it twisted. It's not like they're being corrupted, right? Now, if you're a 4-year-old kid, and hopefully you're not watching this video because I've said a lot of stuff I shouldn't have said, oops, But like, if you're a really young kid, right, you're not even going to know what hot and steamy fucking is. It's like when I was a kid watching TV and things like that. You know, I didn't understand like the sexual references. I didn't feel corrupted. I used to watch stuff that I shouldn't be watching. We all do, all kids do. And that's okay. But Doctor Who is still for children and for adults. Anyway, that's my little theory on mavity versus gravity. They're two separate timelines. I'll be back tomorrow. Who knows what I'll be talking about. Back then, see you soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for commenting. And thanks for subscribing. See you again soon.